Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be talking about this book, the infamous fake diary, literary fraud, one of the worst literary frauds of the late 20th century, the late Dr. Beatrice Sparks, who is not a doctor or a PhD or no, she didn't even have a college degree, and she vomited forth all these fake diaries. I have so many prior videos about her and a whole playlist, and it's kind of surprising that I only just got to this book now. I had known about it since I was 13 years old. In the eighth grade, I saw it in the small section, I guess, of they were books about nonfiction books in the little book house at the Stuyvesant Plaza in Albany, New York, about, for example, puberty, sexual topics, growing up, teen stuff like that. And Go Ask Alice and Jay's Journal, and later It Happened to Nancy were in that small section. I guess my parents didn't want me reading them. They must have thought, oh, it's too grown up for you, or just something not nice. You don't want to read about that. I did not read this book when I still thought it was a real diary, and so I kind of had a much different perception of it, reaction to it, than people who read it as teens or even preteens or 20s whenever they first read it. And oh, this is so horrible. This poor girl, her life was really ruined by drugs, and she went homeless, and people are keep pulling her back into the drug life, and she's trying to get clean. And oh, poor Alice, she died suddenly 3 weeks after the last journal entry, and oh, it was all because of drugs, and that's why we should never do drugs, and why I decided not to do drugs, or why I told other people, as a social worker, a dare police officer or something like that, never to do drugs. And so I know I totally would have been freaked out by this if I had read it at the so-called normal age, expected age, like Jay's Journal, because why would a publisher or an author lie to people and say this happened when it really didn't happen? I was so trusting and naive. And so let's just get down to reviewing this book. This is based off of a blog post which will be published in August. It's much longer than my normal blog post these days, but I just had so many things to say about this book, and I didn't even give away the whole plot blow by blow. Very surprisingly, as I was just saying, I only just read Beatrice Sparks's first and most famous fraud, Go Ask Alice, this year, this past month of July 2024, if you happen to be watching this in future. I'm kind of disappointed I didn't have a chance to read it before I found out it's bad Mormon propaganda, bad anti-drug propaganda created just for, Nixon's pet crusade, and not a real teen's journal. Had I believed it was real, I'm sure I would have been just as creeped out and sucked in as when I read her second fraud, Jay's Journal, and I do plan to have a video about that at some point in the future. So anyway, I'm rereading Rick Emerson's excellent book, Unmask Alice. I have a video about that a few years ago. It's the first video in my playlist, called Beatrice Sparks Was a Vile Fraud. I highly, highly recommend this book. Anyway, I found out from reading this excellent book that Go Ask Alice was instrumental in launching Nixon's war on drugs, and came in the thick of a moral panic about white, bourgeois, suburban, mostly Christian, primarily Protestant within that group, kids using drugs, versus the black, Hispanic, poor, intellectual, artsy, and urban drug users the establishment cared less about. And he really gives some examples about how, when it was those other people, we don't even like those people. We don't want to acknowledge their existence. But when some lovely, nice, blonde, white, and delightsome girls, young women from the right side of the tracks, as we deem it, when they got into drugs, or we suspected they were doing drugs, then we absolutely have to turn all our attentions to, stamping out drugs no matter what. These are our kids, not those kids we hate. So they only started giving a damn about drug use when it hit close to home. And that's definitely a thing in all of Dr. Fraud's books, particularly in Alice the First. These aren't just any teenagers or kids, as she's constantly calling them. Maybe this was a thing, let me know, in the late 60s, early 70s, for teenagers to talk about the kids when they're talking about their own friends or peers. The kids are doing this. Some of the kids at school, these kids. Maybe it's the hippie equivalent of how many people say folks these days when they want to sound, folksy and down with it and friendly and stuff, but they just overuse it to the point of parody and ridiculousness. But anyway, the characters in all of her books are like, white and delightsome, as the Mormons would say, Christians, bourgeois, even like upper class, suburban. They're so-called nice kids who wouldn't never get into trouble of their own accord. None of her characters have any moral agency or free will. They're always like dragged into these problems because unscrupulous people tricked them, took advantage of them, exploited them, like raped them, did all sorts of other things, anything but a teen out of her or his own free will, choosing to, try out some drugs, have premarital sex with a partner out of mutual consent, and nothing bad happens to them, like experimenting with anything else she deemed like completely immoral and wrong and bad because it wasn't, G-rated and like, the Mormon stamp of approval, things like that. And so this was very instrumental in making other adults, in people in positions of power care about these issues because, oh, these are nice, white, delightsome, like waspy, suburban bourgeois kids. So, oh, this is really, really hitting close to home. We don't really care about those icky people living in the cities, particularly if they're not white and delightsome or if they're not religious or they're not in suburbia or just anything like that. So that was basically just one of the things Dr. Fraud specialized in. Since I believe in giving credit where credit is due and trying to find at least one good thing to say about everyone or everything, I will give very grudging praise to Dr. Fraud for making an attempt to try to sound like a real teen before Alice gets into drugs. The language isn't really true to how a teen would talk or write, but the sentiments are very accurate to the adolescent experience. For example, being upset at having to move in the middle of high school, separation from one's closest friend, rejection by a crush, particularly a guy you've really, really been crushing on for many years and you feel like you're in love with him even though you didn't have a relationship or you didn't think it was like mutual, feeling fat and ugly, not fitting in at a new school. However, no real teen, among many other things, and that she gets wrong, is that lovey-dovey with her parents, constantly proclaiming how dear, sweet, precious, wise, angelic, and perfect they are. Like, what teen does that in the history of ever? Even in the Victorian era, it would seem like an over-the-top parody. Oh, my dear mama, and Papa, oh, my precious, precious mama, and Papa, oh, my precious, precious, darling, sweet, lovey-dovey parents. I mean, I'm not exaggerating. That is how pretty much all of her characters talk, and it just sounds so goofy and out of touch, particularly in the modern era, late 20th century, for most teens who are not like completely cloistered and who have lives outside of their families, like parents and all adults in general. They're notoriously uncool. You don't want to hang out with them. And if people like found your journal and read that, they would use that to make fun of you. Oh, go back home to your precious forever mama, Nancy. Or, oh, your sweet, darling, perfect daddykins, Alice. Ask him to help you. And they would make fun of teenagers who talk like that. That is not how any normal teenager is talking. She was just, so completely out of touch. And also, real teenagers do not tend to repeat words thrice for emphasis over and over again, or I should say over and over and over again and again and again, or regularly break out show-off vocabulary words. And when a teen is using words like that, it generally goes along with a general, more literary writing style and certain kinds of interests and personality and just more advanced intellectually, like I was, in Alice, go ask Alice or any of these other journals, these fancy show-off vocab words, they're not consistently used as an overall part of the teen just naturally having a more pretentious literary style and trying to sound, oh, I'm so cool, I'm so much more sophisticated and mature for my years. Oh, everyone, look at me. Oh, I'm writing like I'm really 20 or 30 years old instead of only 15. And many of her, pretty much all of her characters, except with the exception of the real journal entries in Jay's journal, that's obviously a topic for its whole other video, but they just have a really simplistic writing style, kind of like their author. You can't write oh, you're just have a sixth grade level of expression, very simple sentence structure, just expressing yourself like you're younger than you really are. It's not a very highbrow literary way of writing, and then like, oh, all of a sudden breaking out the fancy advanced vocabulary words. Like, one of these things is absolutely not like the others. Despite the title, the narrator's name is never disclosed, and one line suggests it might be Carla. There's also another character named Alice who is referred to briefly. However, I'm going to call her Alice for convenience and the sake of tradition, because what person reviewing this book doesn't refer to the protagonist as Alice? What else are you going to like call her, keep calling her Anonymous or the diarist? That's kind of like confusing after a while. Alice starts keeping a journal shortly before her 15th birthday, and early on has a huge disappointment when her longtime crush Roger stands her up. However, she soon has an even more devastating dilemma on her hands when her dad is invited to be the dean of political science at a university unnamed in another state, also unnamed, but there are certain context clues that suggest it might be Utah, like particularly the talking about, oh, I have to make a Jell-O salad for a party or some kind of social. What other state besides Utah does that? And so many other potential clues it might be Utah, beyond obviously the fact that Dr. Fraud herself did live in Utah. And so this big move compels Alice to leave everything and everyone she knows, everything that's been familiar to her, her house, the neighborhood, her school, her friends. Even if she was never particularly popular at school, at least those were like her friends and acquaintances she knew from back in kindergarten. Now she has to start all over again at a place where everyone is best friends. They don't really accept newcomers. So just as Alice feared, when her family moves shortly after the new year, I think it's supposed to be 1969, although no dates are given. I think like many people think the diary runs from like 68 to 1970, and it was published 1971, and she can't find friends, just as she was afraid of. Meanwhile, her younger siblings, Tim and Alexandria, have no problems making lots of new friends, which further rubs salt into her wounds. Alice, like too many other teen girls in the modern era, is also convinced she's fat and is trying to lose weight. And there's a really scary thing early on. She's losing way too much weight, way too fast. Like, oh, I've lost 10 pounds in a week or something like that. How does that, even happen like that? Like, seriously. And that's just so sad. So many girls feel like that. Oh, I've lost 3 pounds, she's saying at one point, and then, oh, I'm not going to eat any French fries, or I'm rewarding myself with eating a better thing like that. Oh, I've lost 10 pounds, and this is within a week or something. That's really a dangerous weight loss. Dr. Fraud, yet another thing she didn't understand. I'm down to 115, which is all right, but I'd still like to lose another 10 pounds. How tall is this girl? That's a really, really low weight for most, adult or almost adult women. So seriously. In May, Alice finally makes a friend, Beth Baum, whom she quickly becomes very close to. Dr. Fraud's total ignorance of Judaism is on full display in some of the entries about Beth. What a surprise. Claiming weddings can be canceled if the groom thinks the bride doesn't have a factory sealed hymen. What? In the ancient world, unfortunately, and into Middle Ages and stuff, there were some insecure men. Oh, there's no blood. Oh, she must not have been a virgin, even though blood does not automatically equal first time having intercourse. That is such a stupid myth that needs to die, and here she's portraying it. And even in the way it's not in the Torah, it doesn't say, oh, if he finds out she's not a virgin or supposed virgin before the wedding, he can call it off. She just didn't understand anything, and that just portrays stupid ignorant urban legends. And she also insults the importance of marrying within our people. So many people just misunderstand being Jewish as an ethno-religious identity. It's not only a religion. That's just a late 20th century modern Western misconception. And so it's just oh, you're Chinese or you're whatever other ethnic group, Jamaican or Italian or something. So it's very important you marry within your own culture because you want to pass that on. And people who are from within your own group, they understand it in a way outsiders never will. And there's also the whole, the mother has to be Jewish for the children to be Jewish according to Jewish law. But anyway, that's a whole off-topic thing. But again, it really pissed me off to see this ignorance about Judaism in this book. But this woman just did not know anything about anything, complete ignorance. So Alice and Beth are very upset when they have to part for the summer. Beth goes to camp while Alice goes to stay by her grandma in her old city. And Beth is the first of about 4 female friendships in this book. I'm not far from the only one who has felt this is. It seems like Alice has some kind of like unrealized, like trying to repress lesbian tendencies because of the way she writes about her strong friendship towards these other girls. But I feel disgusted because I'm attracted to other women. And the drugs turned me like lesbian, or she's Dr. Fraud actually uses like homophobic slurs, which I'm not going to repeat, but it feels like, Alice is an unintentional, like unwritten closeted lesbian character. That would be like really interesting to see what another like writer doing fan fiction or something could do with this, or if there were like a remake in the modern era, have Alice like out and proud as a lesbian instead of just, I'm so disgusted, I'm feeling close to my friend, or I'm really really close to my friend, but I'm not going to think that there could be something more to that, even when it seems like more on the page and from people like reading between the lines. So over the summer, Alice is thrilled to be invited to a party where she gets one of the cokes spiked with LSD. It's a game called Button, Who's Got the Button? And they spiked 10 out of the 14 cokes. And she has an amazing trip. Dr. Fraud's complete ignorance about drugs rushes to the fore from this point on. Alice goes on for 4 pages about her first trip, in contrast to how she barely mentions getting stood up by her longtime love, Roger. And this trip amazingly starts almost immediately and only lasts a few hours. On average, it takes 20 minutes to 2 hours for LSD to kick in. Not that I know from personal experience, though I am like very curious to eventually try someday. And most trips last about 6 to 12 hours, particularly for the first trip, because like you've never had it in your system before. You can't go home with perfectly normal functions that soon, particularly if you know it's in your system. For a first trip, being closely monitored is particularly important, and they do mention, we need a babysitter for the one who's never had drugs, and so Bill, whom Alice later has sex with for the first time, is her babysitter. But again, like you can't just, I had a great time at the party, but now LSD is like, out of the system, or is like slowly fading. The trip goes on for like 8 to 12, like 15 hours sometimes, and the being like chaperoned, monitored is particularly important because you might hurt yourself inadvertently when you're taking LSD. I'm gonna go ride my bike at night because I'm seeing all this like wonderful, cool, trippy stuff, and I don't, realize I'm really riding into traffic or at night, or like riding like right into like a huge like pothole or something like that, or I'm up on the roof of my house and I don't realize there's no like ledge around the thing, or like banister or something to avoid falling off, or I'm doing other things that I don't realize could be potentially dangerous because I'm just tripping out on acid. So that's like completely unrealistic. But again, like she knew absolutely nothing about drugs. This is just bad anti-drug propaganda intended for other parents, not actual teens who also know jack about drugs. And a lot of this was influenced into the DARE anti-drug program, which I took in the 6th grade in the early 90s. They led us to believe, every single terrible side effect will automatically happen when you take drugs, and the whole Nancy Reagan just say no to drugs. This book, I'm sure Nancy Reagan loved this book. She was probably kind of pissed because she didn't get to write it herself. Like seriously, the anti-drug like propaganda is like so obvious. LSD also isn't known to be addictive, nor is it a gateway drug. Hilariously, Alice immediately has an insatiable taste for every drug in existence, and some of the names of these drugs, like speed and some other words, are just randomly capitalized. Like Dr. Fraud was a terrible writer. Yet the last one she gets to is pot, the classic gateway drug. And seriously, that pot is the one that really, really throws her over the edge. Oh, wow, now I'm going to be a totally committed druggie. Although heroin, she hasn't tried that yet. She tries that later. And, that's way too much for me. I've got to go home. These 2 dudes took turns raping us. That's just a minor laundry list. I have no PTSD. Like Dr. Fraud also had no realistic depiction of how trauma impacts people. It's just like, a minor blip in the road. She also has sex for the first time while on acid a month later with the aforementioned Bill. When Beth returns from camp, Alice is upset she now has a boyfriend whom she's spending all her time with, but not that upset, since she soon turns her attention to new BFF and fellow druggie Chris. Alice is soon, believe this or not, selling acid to elementary school kids as young as like 8, 9 years old. and she and Chris spend almost all their time with new boyfriends, respectively, Richie and Ted. When they catch Richie and Ted having sex with one another, again, the drugs turn them gay in Dr. Fraud world. They rat them out to the cops for being drug dealers and run away to San Francisco to avoid getting in trouble for squealing, and they take a roundabout route so they won't be traced in the obvious path the boys might have assumed they took. And as I was just mentioning, Dr. Fraud repeatedly pushes the point of view that drugs cause homosexuality and liberally uses homophobic slurs. It's just really disgusting and disturbing to read this crap. In a total wish fulfillment scenario, Alice and Chris are able to find great jobs, and this is Berkeley, remember, at an upscale jewelry store soon after quitting their original crummy jobs, and then start their own boutique after less than a month. And they seem to have a pretty swanky apartment they're running the boutique out of. They meet lots of famous people with the names like blanked out. Blanking is so inconsistent in this book. Go to lavish parties and do lots of drugs during this time. Alice decides she can't handle San Francisco and its drug world. The heroin was what really threw her over. So she calls home and, of course, is immediately, unquestioningly, lovingly forgiven by her precious, precious, precious parents, who are thrilled to welcome her back in time for Christmas. And again with a boutique. Remember, Alice is a high school kid, and Chris, I think, is a year older, and these girls are running their own business in the San Francisco Berkeley area, and they're getting like hundreds of dollars from their previous job. They're doing like a 4 or 5 course gourmet meal at a French restaurant to celebrate the upcoming new boutique, and they're making nice bank at the boutique. That's the kind of thing I would have written when I was like 13 years old or something, and we're supposed to believe this could really happen again. Like, Dr. Fraud was just an absolute crap writer. The honeymoon doesn't last long, and Alice soon runs away again to get away from constantly being watched. She's on probation for understandable reasons. During the ensuing months of homelessness, moving around from place to place, prostitution, and constantly being high, she journals on paper bags, like napkins, scraps of paper, and single pieces of paper, like blotted backs of receipts, like just whatever she could find. Not only that, she amazingly keeps this ramshackle journal with her, and in chronological order, albeit without any dates. Like, if you have that much clarity and peace of mind or whatever, presence of mind to regularly keep journaling, why can't you get yourself into rehab if one of these things is not like the other? How many hardened druggies, and particularly homeless druggies who are constantly going around from city to city and even state to state, they're regularly journaling? Wouldn't the drugs be more important? Nothing in this book adds up. It's just complete crap, and she expected people to believe it, and the only reason her books got such minimal editing and almost no real literary criticism is because they were presented as journals of real teenagers, some of whom had died. So, you're criticizing a real person's heartfelt, her deepest journal, her diary. Oh, how dare you criticize that? But because people didn't realize or didn't want to admit publicly they were actually written as fiction. These were not, real people's journals. I just hate how much fraud she got away with. A priest eventually helps Alice to realize she needs to get clean and go home. And guess what? He calls her darling, sweet, endlessly forgiving mommykins and daddykins, who once again lovingly take her back without any questions or anger. That's another Dr. Fraud trope, the perfectly cartoonishly saintly parents. It's shocking the parents in this book are actually married. She almost always depicts them as divorced, and that's the cause of all sorts of problems. Oh, terrible, terrible. Alice's grandpap dies shortly after she returns. He's been in failing health for a while, a heart condition, and she becomes obsessed with the image of maggots and worms crawling all over his corpse. She also has lots of problems with her former drug pals trying to suck her back in, who are as vengeful as mobsters going after an informant. That, again, also makes absolutely no sense. More normal people would be like, oh, wow, more drugs for us. And how are they getting all this money to buy all these drugs? And why is alcohol harder to get than hard drugs? I mean, I know they were, I guess, more common back in the late 60s, early 70s, but how are they getting all these drugs, and why are they, how dare you get off of drugs? We need to pull you back onto drugs. Like nothing is computing about this like story. It just makes absolutely no sense. It's the way someone would write when they're just learning how to write. You know, their fumbled, awkward, amateurish, embarrassing first efforts as a preteen. And like Dr. Fraud was in her like 50s when she wrote this, and then her grandma dies, and both problems become even worse. The fantasy about the maggots and the ex buddies trying to like get her addicted again. I laughed out loud at the lame insults of the druggy kids, as Alice constantly calls her own peers, just like all of Dr. Fraud's other narrators. Hardened druggies can do way better than Miss Polly Pure, Miss Fink Mouth, what? Mary Pure, and Miss Super Fink Mouth, Miss Double Triple Fink Mouth. Like, well, that's like kindergartners insulting one another. Like, what was she trying to blatantly atone for how she used like the F word and other curse words other places in the book? Oh, I'm really a good Molly Mormon, Mr. Bishop. Please pass me at my next temple worthiness interview. I was lying for the Lord with this anti-drug propaganda, and I only used the F-bomb and other curse words because I was doing it for the kids, man. You know, like seriously, it doesn't compute. Alice goes to babysit while she's getting her life back in order and ends up in hospital with bandaged hands and a head injury. It's not really clear from the story, although some reviewers say like this might be like a psych ward, not just a regular part in the hospital. She has no idea how she ended up there or hurt herself. Yet another miracle of miracles, she's able to journal in hospital and with bulky gauze all over her hands. Like, wow, how did she manage that one? While she's there, she continues hallucinating about the worms and maggots who are now eating her. It turns out someone somehow, like, how did that happen, broke into the house where she was babysitting and planted acid-laced chocolate peanuts. What? Yes, that thing all druggies do when friends decide to go clean. Alice went nuts on acid and saw the worms and maggots on her grandpap and herself, and she was even in a coffin at one point, and she began banging her head against a wall and tearing out her hair to get the maggots and the worms off of herself. She, guess what, gets to take her journal with her when she's transferred to, I'm not quite sure from the text, it seems like it's a reformatory, maybe it's another kind of psych ward or like mental hospital, but again, you know, Dr. Fraud was never one for details where it really matters. And so at this reformatory or whatever it is, she befriends a 13-year-old named Babby, that might be a nickname for Barbara, which was still a popular common name for young girls at that point. Babby started using drugs at age 11 when a 32-year-old man gave some to her at the movies. By age 12, she was prostituting, and like all of the other troubled kids in Dr. Fraud's books, her problems are attributed to the sin of divorced parents. And this is the third girl, I think. Like there was Beth and Chris. Oh, I forgot to mention Doris, who was 14 when she was homeless. Alice also felt, you know, repressed lesbian desires towards Doris, and now along comes Babby, like the fourth girl. She's feeling what seemed very clearly unwritten, repressed, you know, lesbian feelings. Like seriously, was Dr. Fraud telling on herself? Was she like secretly bi-curious, and this was her way of trying to get it out or like talk about it? Like seriously. Alice finally gets out of the reformatory, committed to staying clean, and embarks on a happy new life, ensconced back with her conservative, bourgeois, suburban family, depicted as the ideal versus those icky countercultural urban liberals. At one point, Dr. Fraud also like bashes people protesting the Vietnam War, and it's even, oh, long hair is terrible. You should be a conservative, clean-cut 1950s little, you know, teenager, the way people back then were. Oh, this is just so horrible. Like kids these days, they don't understand being conservative and like by the books, buttoned up, cookie cutter conformist. That's the only way to live. And when you step out of line one little bit, terrible things automatically happen to you. Oh, this is just such obvious, like, damn propaganda. She totally swears off her formal, evil ways, and now wants nothing more than to be a good little wifeykins for her very understanding boyfriend, Joel, who's like, starts college a little bit early. He's like barely 18 when she meets him, and she's 16. I guess that age difference really wasn't that as pronounced back in the day as it was now. It's only, 2 years of age difference, and even I don't think like 16 and 18 is necessarily like always like creepy and inappropriate, but he is written as a really good guy, the exact opposite of her drug buddies she has been having sex with. But of course, Dr. Fraud, like Alice does the whole Mrs. Husband's full name, Mr. and Mrs. Husband's full name, Dr. and Mrs. Husband's full name, because apparently like she likes being passively identified, like the 1950s called, like, yet again. She also wants to be a youth social worker so she can scare other kids away from dope. And then she randomly dies 3 weeks after deciding to quit journaling. And it's like blamed, like drugs are being blamed, although there's like no evidence. Oh, we don't know why she died. We just know it was because of drugs. Just take our word for it. Don't do drugs, kids. Drugs bad. Drugs ruin your life, like permanently. It also really pissed me off how Dr. Fraud implies journals are only for teens, since adults should discuss their problems with other people. That's not the only reason to keep a journal, you stupid fraudster. Like, did she ever read any of the many published journals from people who kept journals as adults, like Samuel Pepys, for example, that springs to mind as one of the more well-known famous journals who are published, or just like so many you could find in like anthologies, or just so many famous journals. Just like look it up on Amazon or something like that. And they weren't just, oh, I only journal because I have problems and there's no one in my life I can talk to. They're talking about things they're doing in their life, their innermost thoughts, like what they think about, like, politics or the books they're reading, or just like all sorts of reasons to keep a journal beyond, oh, I have problems and I have no one to confide in, so I'm going to personify a notebook. And Dr. Fraud, there's no words for me to just, like, I'm totally lost for words and how, like, stupid and out of touch and just completely ignorant she was. But, then again, the morgue highly discourages private lives. They make sure people have almost no time to do, like, anything outside of the cult. Like, Monday, like, Sunday through the next Sunday, 7 days a week, there's some kind of, like, cult activity, making sure people are being closely watched, or only doing things with the cult, like family home evening, visiting teachers, like home teachers, like 10 hours of services on Sunday, just all these other, cult like things, so you barely have a life, outside of the morgue. This book reads like a bad first draft of someone who's never learned how to write beyond a 6th grade level, if that. It's also full of Dr. Fraud's trademarks, like as I have mentioned, repeating a word thrice for emphasis, calling peers the kids, and lovingly worshipping cartoonishly saintly parents. What teen does that, seriously? And why can't she be consistent with what Alice calls her parents? She even uses different names for them in like successive entries. For example, Mama, Mom, and Mother, and Dad, Daddy, and Father. And tell me what waspy teen, Alice, she's waspy, not what they used to call like ethnic. Like, what teen of that like demographic in the 60s was calling her mother Mama? Like, maybe like an Italian American or like Polish American, where Mama is the default word for mother in those languages, even among adults, and it doesn't sound like babyish for even like an older person to call her mother Mama. But like, what teen and bourgeois, like waspy suburbia in the 60s called her mother Mama? That's again, I'm totally like blown away by how just like stupid and ignorant, and like it totally reads like a first draft. And there should have been so much more editing on these books, and she only got away with like almost zero editing because she pretended they were like real journals. This is so clearly bad anti-drug propaganda that only got a publishing deal because it came out at the right time, backed by the right connections, as Rick Emerson talks about in this wonderful book. I again highly recommend it. At least Art Linkletter, who played an instrumental role in its creation, later advocated decriminalization of soft drugs and reform over jail, although he like kind of regretted a lot of people didn't realize he had changed his tune so radically. And he himself said, "Oh, I'm sorry I was so like strident and rigid about most like drug things back in the day. I wanted someone or something to blame for my dear daughter's suicide. I thought it had to be drugs, and therefore I had to get everyone else off of drugs and make sure like they were punished very severely." But he said, like, I didn't know all the facts. I was just like thinking with my like heart, and instead of like sitting down calmly and thinking, oh, maybe this is not the way to go, or maybe I was wrong. And he admitted he was wrong. So I have a huge deal of respect for him, and from everything I've like heard about him, he seems like he was a really nice genuine stand-up guy. So I really do have mad props to Art for like changing his tune and not being afraid to admit he was like wrong about it. But meanwhile, Beatrice Sparks maintained the same all drugs bad, her, der, they lead to automatic ruin and death attitude to the end. Thank you very much for watching. I know this video was a bit longer than I had expected, but it was based off of a rather long blog post around like a little under 1,600 words. Please leave me a comment. Let me know if you've ever read this fraud. Did you read it when you like thought it was real, or did you read it knowing it was already a fake? Have you read any of this fraud's other books? What do you think of literary fraud in general? And please check out my playlist about this huge fraud. I review a number of her other books, and I have a whole bunch more videos planned about her for future topics. So thank you guys again very much for watching, and please subscribe if you haven't already. I do love seeing comments, and I will see you again very soon. Bye.